We're thrilled today to have Dish Media. Dish Media sponsored a lot of our events and presented at lots of these events over the last year and a half. Not only that, before pandemic, they were heavily involved with this as well. So we're thrilled today to have Andrew Tint, who is the Senior Account Executive, who's the Head of Programmatic Partnerships at SLING TV, part of Dish. Andrew, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can. Good to see you, my friend.
Good to see you as well.
Well, we're thrilled to have you. It looks like we have about a 10-minute presentation from you. You're going to be talking about real-time buying for real-time events, leveraging programmatic TV for live events. Is that kind of right on?
That nailed it. Exact title.
Well, looking forward to this, and what a topic. I mean, especially now, this COVID thing is, we're trying to get out from under it. We're trying to get back to live events. We're out here in Park City right now, making a stab at this. So I'm really looking forward to how programmatic plays into this kind of thing. Your presentation, your deck is live. It looks good, and I won't take up any more of your time. Looking forward to this.
All right. Well, I appreciate it, and thank you again for the opportunity. As noted, my name is Andrew Tint. I lead up SLING TV's programmatic partnerships team, and we are going to be talking about how to leverage programmatic to buy real-time events and why it is a must in today's ecosystem. So to start, I think the obvious reason we need to be thinking about this today is that investing in CTV is now the actual key to incremental growth, right? Gone are the days where CTV is a box to be checked, a few new users. It is now a key demographic to any marketer's plan. And when you look at that, there's a number of reasons why it's become what it is. For starters, if you look at people like SLING and virtual MVPDs overall, it's an array of premium networks. These are the same networks that you see, for example, on linear, showing the same content, but streamed over the IP, right? And so you think about the premium nature of this television, it is the Discoveries, the Turners, the AMCs, the Disneys, and most importantly, it is that premium content unduplicated from linear. Very few people, for example, in fact, nobody has SLING and Dish. So it's important to understand that not only are these live events a massive opportunity, but they're a massively new audience for you. We also know that in today's day and age with CTV, you are essentially removing the waste. You are doing one-to-one impression targeting and delivery. Just as the last presenter talked about the power of addressable, we see something similar within this CTV. And most importantly, I think for this panel, it is so easy to buy CTV right now programmatically and to buy OTT holistically. Gone are the days where it was overtly complex. DSPs have worked extremely well to simplify the equation. So why do we want to buy live events? I think to sum it up is simply to be memorable, right? The opportunity for live events are massive now with programmatic because these are events that are buzzworthy. These are events that people who are watching live, right? They're not recording it to skip ads. They're not, there's too much of a risk in certain events like Monday Night Football or the Oscars to have it spoiled. And so what that allows you to do is not only be on events that are being talked about, but also events that people are engaged in real time, that people have leaned into the content. They are on the couch. They're not missing the fourth quarter of an NBA playoff game. And because of that, what we find is that there's just essentially much higher demand and scale when these events are on, right? Looking at SLING, for example, we see 3 to 5 times the amount of avails per hour when a live event is ongoing than that same time period when there isn't one, which means your reach is now exponentially higher. The Trade Desk actually made my job a lot easier because they put out a report last week that also tied this up very nicely, but essentially noted that 74% of marketers report that buying CTV ads in conjunction with live events is actually more cost-effective and impactful. Because again, you're removing waste and you're hitting specific individuals. And also, perhaps even the most important stat I'll give you today on why you need to be buying this is that 65% of adults 18 to 34 turn to streaming for live sports. So we've essentially removed a massive economic audience pool and have placed them solely in the CTV threshold. So if you want to really target these events, which you should, you really do have an opportunity to be memorable for your consumers. And so what does that actually look like? right? We talked about building an impact for every budget. And so there are two types of buyers. This is obviously very high level, people cross over, but the way that we usually think about it at Dish and here at Sling is you have your small but mighty buyers. These are buyers who frankly do not want to pay the cost of entry for major events, right? It's $750K for an NFL spot. All of a sudden, you can buy that same content and you can buy it with scale and remove some of the cost barrier and really work through on a CPM basis. And when doing that, not only can you say to your brand, or not only if you're Ashley's Paint Shop, can you be on some of these biggest events, but you can do it with massive scale and large viewership. You don't have to wait anymore for the remnant inventory. So regardless if you're Ashley's Paint Shop or if you're Geico, there is room to grow that audience through the lens of a reach play in live events. You then have the big name buyers, right? These are buyers who are obviously already buying these events, who spend a lot of money every year in certain events, whether it's the Oscars, the Olympics, whatever it may be. And for them, they have an opportunity to extend what they're doing in the linear campaign and maximize wide reach. And they also have the added benefit of starting to narrow their targeting. Perhaps they feel comfortable with the reach they're getting on linear, and they really want to focus more on auto intenders or specific demo or parents with kids and use that on these lean forward events. So your options really are, do I do it for broad reach and get an opportunity for my brand to be in these events, or do I use it as an audience play when I have a highly engaged audience? But I think the beauty of programmatic and the true beauty is that your user's journey doesn't end with the event. I would argue it actually starts with the event, because programmatic has essentially allowed you to take the user that you hit and then continue that journey with him across the open internet. And so that's one of the true advantages of why people always ask me, hey, why would I buy this programmatic instead of IO? And I respond, well, when you buy something programmatic, you actually have the great opportunity to expand your user's journey, to not make it a simple one and done campaign. So whether that is continuing on Sling, whether that is moving to display, whatever it is, you're allowing yourself to drive conversions off the event merely by being on the event itself. And I think that provides massive opportunity for all different types of buyers. So, how do we get started? And how does a process like this begin? How do we start to think about, the consumer journey and the best practices? And it's actually very simple, right? The first is determine your audience based on your goals and how you want to target. In other words, don't let yourself kind of get bogged down by all these little pieces. Understand the high level of what you want to do, who your audience is, and what events you really or what events are commonly associated with your campaign. Because believe it or not, there's not always inherent value of just hitting every event that some buyers do, right? If you're a truck company, you might not want to hit figure skating, or if you're a running company, you might not be interested in ice hockey. We find that actual audiences do gravitate towards certain events. I would also say that I think SSPs and DSPs in today's ecosystem have amazing power in terms of understanding the marketplace, and every buyer should be talking to them regularly. But for events like this, you always will need to work with the publisher, because forecasting will not work in the SSP and DSPs when you're talking about things that have such valleys and peaks. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. So work with the publisher to understand what type of deal should I be running, PMP, PG, what the optimum campaign parameters are, whether that's frequency cap, whether that's spend, whether it's 15 or 30-second creative, whether it's heavying up in the beginning of the month or at the end of the month. And ensure that you're taking all that into account. Additionally, be flexible with your budget. You never want to get stuck being rigid with live sports because of the vast array that it can shift. Maybe there's a rain out, right? There are hundreds of different things that occur that will stop you from necessarily hitting a specific budget. So always have the freedom to shift. And for larger campaigns, always leverage the DSP tools to determine the next steps. Understanding what's working and hasn't worked will allow you to be smarter the next time around. Adjust the bids. Certain events will have less viewers and you can bid lower. Others will have max viewers and you're going to need to actually be targeting at a higher rate. And then always adapt what the data says, because at the end of the day, you're only going to be able to follow that user if you're leveraging the tools at your disposal. But more so than doing what's right, it's important to avoid what's wrong, right? Never in live sports should you pick a team or a night. You should always be creating holistic strategies around larger event runs, not a game, a season. For example, targeting Knicks fans in New York during NBA Knicks games isn't actually that useful. Target NBA fans holistically. Target the NBA. Never buy just an award show. We always talk about buying the seasonal coverage, because consumers who watch the awards are in fact going to turn around, or who watch the red carpet coverage are going to turn around and buy an award show or watch an award show. So never be into just one line item, always expand to multiple days, weeks, months. Never be rigid in your expectations, because you need to make sure the campaign supports your larger strategy, and you have to understand that pacing evenly is extremely difficult, if not impossible, with live sports. Viewership fluctuates, so you need to be ready for peaks and valleys. We always talk about, if a game's a blowout in the second quarter, you're probably not going to hit your budget, because of the way Q3 and Q4 in a football game will not attract those same levels. So never, ever be rigid, and always understand that this is a long-term campaign. So at the heart of it, why should programmatic, specifically, why should live sports programmatically and live events programmatically be a next investment? It's very simple. It's easy to buy. Sling has made it incredibly easy to go in there and start buying today. You have plenty of flexible spend options, and you don't have to sacrifice scale like you would have had to 3-4 years ago. There are no IOs in programmatic with us, and we really don't need a spend commitment unless you're doing guarantees. And finally, most publishers today are DSP agnostic. So we'll work with you on the platform that you want to leverage. And at the end of the day, you want to work with a publisher because it allows you to expand reach, to target audience, to be at the right place at the right time. And live events today are so accessible because of A, inventory access, and B, the power of programmatic tech that we now all have readily available. So if you want to dive deeper into this, you want to understand the best practices, please feel free to reach out. My name is Andrew Tint. I lead up a programmatic team at Sling. And you can reach me at andrew.tint@sling.com. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much, Andrew. That was awesome. And extremely helpful.